Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we have a familiar face with us today. Again, we have Cultural Hall. How are you today, Culch?
I'm doing good. How's everybody doing?
We're fabulous. And, we had an episode that we posted earlier this morning where we learned that your previous name may have been Masonic Hall, right?
It was.
And
I
then
changed
morphed
it
to a new name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of changing it
Hall.
again to Cultural Center, but we'll see.
Yeah, you were saying that you'd visited another building, a ward, and you'd seen a sign that said Cultural Center.
Yeah, they're changing my identity.
Sounds awful narcissistic. Cultural Center, like
sounds presumptuous.
Revolves around you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wonder if you are Masonic Hall, maybe we just start calling you Mason. Maybe that
would work.
Right?
Sure.
Macy, something like that.
Mason's a little more manly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So Thanks, too. Landon. Macy. You got my back.
We'll figure out something. Whatever you call him, we have the amazing Culch, our good friend, on to help us with this episode today, which is going to be a really interesting, fun episode. Before that, though, I think Landon and I want to just very quickly make a little update, little announcement. What we started the day kind of strangely getting a picture from some of our friends in Cody, the ones that have been involved in the lawsuit, trying to get the LDS temple relocated somewhere else. And it's been ongoing, for almost 2 years, isn't it, Landon?
Yeah, at least that, I think. Yeah, about 2 years, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. They were the first ones to contact us. But anyway, they sent us a picture and they said, look, they're rolling out some AstroTurf on the temple site. What do you think that means? And of course, both Landon and I are like, oh, that means groundbreaking ceremony, right? Because they always put that AstroTurf, and then they have that little piece of dirt and they have the shovels. And so we thought, well, gosh, there haven't been any announcements. We checked with our faithful friends there who do give us information, and they said, I haven't heard anything. No one had heard anything. And we thought, well, maybe it's, I don't know, they're just setting it up for tomorrow, because typically groundbreakings are on Saturdays quite often. So I wasn't sure about the protocol. Then they sent us another picture, and a whole bunch of black vehicles had moved in, right? And we all know what those are, right, Landon?
I've always wondered why that's the sacred service, but you'd think they'd go around in white trucks, but nope, they've got to be dark. So I guess they look like it's someone important in dark vehicles, evidently.
The sacred service. I love that. And as we learned at our Days of 47 parade last year, they have little badges that look like a police officer's badge, but it has an angel Moroni on it. So anyway, a bunch of dark vehicles showed up. And again, the residents there are like, we're not sure what's going on. And I thought, well, maybe it is just kind of a dress rehearsal for tomorrow. Then all of a sudden we were contacted again, and they said, no, all the dark vehicles are gone. They've taken everything down. And that's what made us realize that it was the groundbreaking ruse. They literally did it, just stealth in and stealth out, which is just crazy. And we saw a little announcement in one of the Cody newspapers, and it's already up on the church's newsroom site, isn't it, Landon?
Yeah, it does. This doesn't surprise me. I know when we went with Natasha after her excommunication to give a, she can rebut the decision of the court, and she went to give that. They actually shut down the entire church office building and send everybody home, because they knew there was going to be, and what was there, maybe 30 people there. But the church cannot stand to see anyone protest or anything that looks like people are dissatisfied. It looked like they'd actually taken pieces of the temple and set it around to block the view so that nobody could.
At the Cody site,
at the Cody site, to see what was going on. So just shows you that they must contain everything and make it photo op perfect. And for being such a blessing that they said it was, you'd think they would have wanted the community to know, but they clearly wanted nobody to know. There was only a few people even at it.
That's why I'm calling it the groundbreaking ruse. And I just very quickly want to read this very short paragraph from the church news about what happened. A groundbreaking ceremony for the Cody, Wyoming temple was held on Friday, September 27th, 2024. Elder Stephen R. Bangeter, the first counselor in the North American Central Area Presidency, presided at the event. So somebody I think a lot of us haven't heard of, don't know who that is. Also in attendance was Elder Kevin R. Duncan, Executive Director of the Temple Department. In a dedicatory prayer on the site, Elder Bangeter asked a blessing on those in the community around the new temple. We ask that they may feel a spirit of peace wash over them, granting them comfort and assurance that the presence of this temple will bring added joy, prosperity, beauty, and unity to their lives and the community, he prayed. Which I say to bullocks. Landon had never heard that phrase before.
Oh, we had.
Nemo can explain what that means.
I was going to say it's English. Yep.
Nonsense.
I've heard of buttocks, but not bullocks.
No.
Yeah.
This is not that kind of show.
About the same thing.
It's like saying balls, you're just like, oh, that just makes me so frustrated. I'm sorry. I'm venting on our podcasting viewers and listeners, but it just barely happened. What do you think, Colch, before we get to our actual episode? Any thoughts on that? That just happened today, like just now.
I think it shows the effect that y'all are having with this, because you've been podcasting about the temple situations for a long time, and they've clearly taken note and are very aware, of people watching, that they set it up to be very secretive so that you wouldn't find out until after it was over.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I did look up Bangeter because I figured he must be related to the former governor of Utah, and I couldn't find, I don't think he's a son, but he's probably somehow related. But this tells you how ridiculous these numbers of temples have gotten. This is the guy they sent to groundbreak a temple, and he's from the 5th quorum of the 70.
So many quorums.
Guess what he does for a living?
Lawyer.
Yes,
lawyer?
he's a lawyer.
Lawyer, of course. He's a lawyer.
Another lawyer. That's who they send up to take care of these spiritual things, is their lawyers. Is it any wonder that everyone is confused? What kind of church is this? Well, it's a church run by lawyers. So I wondered, was there a prayer circle in Fairview for the members to feel the blessing of having to comply with the laws of the land, that they might feel peace and joy that they've been, allowed to build a temple there if they just meet the codes? I'm guessing they didn't make that prayer.
No,
they probably are praying that they get riled up and that they'll sue and claim that they've all been persecuted as a result of it. So
it's just a hot mess.
We'll see, but that's not why we're here tonight.
No, that's not why we're here. In fact, we're talking about the opposite of a stealth, covert, under the radar, no one knows, groundbreaking. If we pull our slides up, we're talking about the opposite of something that's stealth and covert. We are talking about something that's so ostentatious, so in your face. We're talking about prophet worship. And we're, in this case, prophet, right? Because it could be a little of both. I mean, we could go back and forth.
LDS worship both. Yes,
exactly.
Prophets and prophets, and a prophet that makes a prophet, that's a double. It's like a double rainbow.
It's like a double
all the way.
Well, and the whole idea for this podcast came about because of a post that I saw on Faithful's social media from a Faithful member, and we'll kind of read that. But the idea is concern. Do you think we're acting now in the church like we worship the prophet? Because this person had been getting some pushback, and I thought, conference is coming up. It's coming up this weekend, and I don't know. It seems to me that prophet worship has kind of taken on a life of its own. Have you noticed anything trending that way, Colch?
Yeah, every time I get on social media, it's President Nelson this and President Nelson that. So it's
And unlike the Cody groundbreaking ceremony, I mean, they were counting down to this birthday for they started on his 95th birthday that they had the huge shindig, and
been counting for 5 years.
And then they've been counting for 5 years to this one. They had a big card signing ceremony 2 months before.
Yeah, there's a whole trajectory for the birthday that we're going to go into at the end of toward the end of the presentation. So, Landon, do you want to read the definition of worship?
It's a transitive verb, to honor or show reverence for as a divine being or supernatural power, or to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. Celebrity worship by her fans. So I don't think there can be any question when you read these that it falls under that. It's definitely extravagant respect that is shown to the prophet.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting because I think there's worship of the position, a prophet, a role, and then within that there's worship of the person. And I think some prophets who have stronger personalities and maybe sort of encourage it a little more, it just goes off the chart because they're already worshiping the position of prophet. Our church has a prophet. But then to add that on top of that, a charismatic or narcissistic, however you want to look at it, actual person in that role, it's just like a double whammy, like a double rainbow. What do you think about that, Colt?
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think Nelson is an interesting person to fill that role because, in my opinion, and people may disagree, the man has quite an ego. When you've been a surgeon and you've held people's life in the palm of your hand, literally, you have a God complex. And he does. And you see that in the way that he runs the church and the way that he's fulfilled his office.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this picture that I chose to show, it's fairly well known. It was only up in the church news just online briefly, and then they took it down. But it lives forever, of course, in print. This is a picture of the print, and of course, his arm. Everybody made the comparison. He looks like the Christus,
Jesus.
right? He's got his arms out. He's got the white suit. It's an interesting look, I think, and I think there's a reason they took it down so quickly from the church newsroom.
In his defense, I've seen him walk out to congregations that he was visiting, and he does that kind of arms out pose. So I think it was just a bit of a gaffe considering his outfit.
Yeah, his shtick. But I mean, do the rest of us walk like that when we enter a room? Maybe we should start. Hello,
but we're not
I'm
prophets,
here.
right?
Hello, my fans.
It's interesting. All right, let's go to our next slide, and we're going to dive in. And like I said, this came from a question that I found on Faithful social media. Is it a bad look? So this person said, "How do I explain that we're not a person worshiping cult on the president's birthday?" And the person said, "I'm trying to explain to folks that we worship Christ and that the prophet president is simply a title for the president of the church. However, the person I'm talking to keeps linking in the church's social media, which is all about the prophet and celebrating his birthday. I'll be honest, it's not a great look." And then later on, they said, "Or we've all heard the questions, been accused of it, and or even wondered about it ourselves. When I was accused of it by my Baptist friends while in high school, I often got defensive and denied it. As I got older, though, certain practices started to stand out to me as problematic, even as a faithful Mormon." And I think it's true. Like this person, their friend showing them social media could have pulled up anything days before President Nelson's birthday, and there was a clock ticking down to his birthday right there on the church's official website. So I can understand why people would be confused and why this faithful member would say, "That looks so great on the front page of the official church's news page. There's not Christ. There's a countdown to our leaders, our dear leaders' birthday." So do you guys think, Cults First and then Landon, is this person off base, or even a faithful Mormon is going, how do I explain this?
No, this is someone who's actually like opened their eyes halfway and are seeing what's going on. If you're in the church and you're really in it, you hear these accusations and you're like, no, he's just our prophet. He's a great man. We love him. We want to celebrate him. But if you're outside looking in, it is so blatantly like hero worship. And Nelson embraces it. And I wonder how much of it is him kind of driving some of it, or if it's just people eager to please him, and that's why. Or a combination of the two.
A combination. Yep, I think so.
I think it's a combination of the two, because when you have somebody who wants it and everybody wants to please him, the two go hand in hand and it just goes over the top, which is exactly what we seem to be seeing. I wonder if I don't remember the church having a countdown clock to Christmas, which is when we celebrate Jesus's birthday,
or Easter,
or sign the world's biggest card signing "Happy Birthday" to Jesus, so that Jesus is in the world Guinness Book of World Record instead of President Nelson. We don't see that, or Easter for the resurrection, or his actual birthday, as we're told, April 6th is his real birthday. We don't. In fact, it's just been in recent years that the church has even celebrated Christmas. Because why? We don't make pomp and ceremony out of sacred things. But the prophet's birthday, oh, hey, we got to have a big shindig with balloons and cake and singing and everything else. So evidently, it's not that sacred of a calling that we treat that way.
Yeah, everyone loves a good piece of cake. I know I do.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, well,
and I did hear anecdotally by, perusing social media that a lot of LDS people did celebrate President Nelson's birthday with cake in their home.
I saw that.
With treats. I mean, they're literally at home singing to him, celebrating having a birthday with their kids and helping them all worship or celebrate President Nelson. So
yeah, you've
interesting.
got to think, are they doing that for the President of the United States birthday? Are they doing that for other people's birthday? Why do it for him? And it's because they want to teach their children, you must obey this man at any cost. That's the reason they're teaching that. So
yeah, and we're going to go into some specifics. When I started looking for specifics, oh my goodness, boy, did I find a lot. Let's see. Why don't Landon and Colt trade off reading these? You can start, Landon. These are some answers that I got from that same social media post where the person asked, how do I explain this? These are some faithful answers, some things that they're saying. You can look at it this way. Why don't you read the first, Landon, and then we'll switch back and forth with you and Colt.
We love our general authorities and are grateful we have a prophet. They are good leaders and role models in a world where those things can seem rare at times. Yes, I get it. Revering leaders is not something U.S. culture in general values or understands. Too many bad leaders in the world's history. But those were bad people. Our own prophet will never be an evil dictator. He doesn't have the power, for one thing, and there is D&C 121 telling us if someone abuses their priesthood, then their priesthood authority becomes null. Personally, I wish we weren't.
Culture, read the next one.
Okay.
All right. Personally, I wish we weren't putting so much emphasis on it from a PR standpoint. But if the Pope was turning 100, Catholics would be doing the same thing. The most prominent leader in the church is turning 100. It doesn't seem that out of the blue that we'd have a birthday for him. But I get the sentiment that it can appear weird that we're putting such an emphasis on it.
Yeah, so these are faithful answers. Even they're going,
Yeah. And of course, it might not be weird that the Catholic Pope would have a birthday party, but, the Catholic Church is the whore of all the earth. We'd expect that from them, according to Bruce R. McConkie and Mormon doctrine. That is. And so, I kind of take that with a grain of salt there.
And we've also had a Pope retire early.
That's exactly right.
Happen in the LDS
and we also had a birthday party when he turned 95 as well. So that kind of shoots that he's turning 100 is the reason for it. To be blunt, it's a fantastic look. If we were being honest about the value of a prophet and appropriately admired him like you might admire any great man, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, etc., it would look like how we admire the current president of the church. Don't cast your pearls before swine.
So this person wants more. Even more. Yeah.
Those kind of responses, they make me sick, but at the same time, it's like, man, they are all in and you got to kind of respect it.
That's right. I wonder what their children are being taught, right? Oh, there's that George Washington, Abraham something, but President Nelson.
Mm-hmm. All right. That we're celebrating that our leader turned 100. It doesn't happen very often. If they say that in and of itself looks culty, I think they've already decided we're culty and are now just trying to look for things to reinforce that view.
Okay. Yeah, so there was a variety of responses, but most people weren't over the top like, hail dear leader. And most people were like, people don't understand. And, just kind of keeping their culture a little separate, saying, we're in, but not of the world. We do things a little bit differently. So, but like you said, at least some eyes are opening and they're going, I wonder about this. So,
and again, it happened when he was 95. So when they say it doesn't happen that often, it appears it happens every about 5 years. And if he dies, how old is President Oaks?
90. He's like 94,
93, 94. So we're going to have another big party when he turns 95, right?
If he makes it,
we gotta have one for him when he's 95. So, it looks like it's going to happen every couple of years at the aging rate that if we have it at 95 and 100, we'll be having one every couple of years.
Well, and President Nelson could reach 105. I can't even imagine what that birthday blowout would look like. So As they say, though, your first birthday is very much like your last. You're bald, you don't recognize anyone at your party, you have no teeth, so you can't eat, and you're wearing a diaper. This is what they say. I actually heard that joke from someone in a care center where my parents were being taken care of. So, which I thought was cute.
You can't argue with it. That's why it's
I
funny.
can't argue it. Yeah, they would know. So I thought that's it. That's exactly it. So, all right. So let's talk about just some of the specifics. Do prophets have a God complex, or does the role of the prophet just lend itself to sort of a God complex? Because again, it's a role, and then it's an individual person fulfilling that role. So sometimes a lot of distinction there, sometimes not. There's a quote from Teachings of the Presidents of the Church, Wilford Woodruff, which says, "The Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of the church to lead you astray. It is not in the program. It is not in the mind of God. If I were to attempt that, the Lord would remove me out of my place." So really the only way a prophet can be removed is to die. And so I have to ask, what did Harold B. Lee and Howard W. Hunter do? Right? Because I think Howard W. Hunter was only in for 9 months before he was removed. And President Lee was only in, I believe, for 17 months. Anyway, very, very short terms. And they weren't necessarily older. You know, it was kind of unexpected, especially Howard W. Hunter. And I liked him. I really liked him as a prophet. So, but it is interesting, the idea that, you know, we can't lead you astray, or God will literally smite us down. And I was thinking, okay, this is kind of an older teach. I haven't heard this a lot recently, but then Kulch pointed out this video I'd forgotten about. Let's go to the next screen where we hear this reiterated again. So this is President Nelson joined by some primary children and being interviewed. And there were a lot of questions from this woman, I can't remember her name now, put to the kids prior to this, but I kind of cut it down to the relevant part. So let's watch this for a second here.
This in of itself is quite culty, just the way she presents this.
Exactly. Well, there we go.
Any other thoughts? Why do you follow the prophet? Why is that important? Yes, Nathan.
So it's important because you can follow him, and if you follow him, you can like live in the celestial kingdom, and you'll be happy with your families, and you'll be super happy, and you can live forever.
President Nelson, would you ever lead anyone astray?
Oh, no.
That's not what prophets do, is it?
Some of them have said, if the president of the church should ever lead people astray, God would take him away. So I like to stay here. And I won't lead you astray. Do you know what the word prophet means? He speaks for God. And so God won't lead you astray, and the prophet will not lead you astray, because God loves you, and I can tell you that the prophet loves you, and that children like you all over the world. You're just beautiful. Thank you so much for your goodness.
You know, the looks on those kids' faces remind me of when Elder Bednar grabbed that kid. They've all kind of got glassy eyes, and they're kind of going, they look a little freaked out. I don't know. But again, there he says it right out loud. I will be removed, which is also kind of scary to say in front of kids, if I ever were try to lead you astray. So this still exists, this idea.
And what does that mean, you're going to be removed? Does that just mean, like you said, are you going to die suddenly, like Lee or Hunter? Or is like God legit going to come down and like take you?
Yeah, well, Landon and I were talking about this before about, you know, that is how the next prophet is chosen. The prior prophet dies. So what about all this extreme medical intervention where you know that these brethren who are living decades longer than previous brethren, it's because they get the top medical care where someone else in their position might not be living as long. So is that ethical? Should you let God choose the prophet by just letting people age naturally and die naturally?
And I'd like to point out on this video where he says, you know, that some prophets have said that they'd be removed. Well, that prophet has been removed because whoever said that isn't here anymore. So every one of those, every single prophet has died. So how do we know if they died as a result of the Lord removing them for leading us astray, versus they just died because they were old. I mean, Joseph Smith himself was removed.
People do
So
believe that.
Joseph
People do
must have
believe
been
he
leading
was.
us astray. That could be the argument that you make. How do we know, they say, how do we know if he's talking as a man or as the prophet?
Yeah.
How do we know if he's dying because he's being removed or because he's simply being called home? We wouldn't have any way to know. So this whole argument is ridiculous.
It's one
You
of the
got to pray
mysteries.
about it.
We can't worry about it. That's right. It's too much to think about. Just get personal revelation and push forward. It's too complex. All right. So yeah, thanks for sharing that video. That was perfect. And exactly like you just brought up, Landon, speaking as a man or speaking as God's mouthpiece. Landon, do you want to read this? These are, again, just some posts from social media where people were weighing in on this topic. And I thought they had really good points.
We throw God under the bus to defend bad practices of past prophets like racism and polygamy. We can't dare accept that a prophet made a mistake. God must have mandated these evils, so we try hard to justify them. Some prophets and apostles have made it clear that they are not infallible, that they will make mistakes, while others have taught that church leaders will never lead the church astray. God will not allow it.
So yeah, just what you said, Coach, it's incredibly confusing. Do you have any thoughts on the, and I have for our listeners, I have a prophet looking person with two signs. One sign says, God is me, and the other says speaking as a man. So maybe you hold them up depending on what's happening. I've heard them suggest at conference that maybe there's a sign, you click it on, it says man, click it on, it says God. I mean, what is the protocol? How do we understand?
The only person who ever really did this was Joseph Smith, because he would say, "Thus saith the Lord."
That's
He would speak in the voice of God.
Yes.
So it was very clear that he was speaking on God's behalf. But, these days you don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I don't think a lot of prophets since Joseph Smith have had the, wherewithal to be that direct on things. They don't. Everything's decided as a committee. Everything's a quorum. Policies come out, procedures. They vote and pray on revelations. Nobody just comes out and says, this is it. Thus saith the Lord.
Prophets don't prophesy anymore.
Prophets
I've seen
prophesy.
people on social media try to justify that, saying that, if you're a runner, that implies that you run. If you're a prophet, that would imply that you prophesy. And they'd be like, no, that's not what it means. It means they do this and they do that. And I go, well, they can do that, but a prophet should also prophesy. But,
and they're not even a witness anymore for Jesus Christ. They're a special witness of the name of Jesus Christ. So their role is really being dialed back. So you have to ask, what do they do? Yet they're so celebrated, as we're pointing out here. Did you have a thought, Landon?
Yeah, I did, where it says some prophets and apostles have made it clear that they are not infallible. Yes, they say that all the time. The problem is they don't tell us where they've been fallible so that you know what to ignore and what not to ignore.
Great point.
They won't claim that the past racism of the past was wrong. They won't claim today that the way they treat the gay community is wrong. They didn't admit that polygamy was wrong. So if they're infallible, they should say they're infallible and where they made a mistake.
Right.
But they won't, because that would then make it look like they're not speaking for God, and therefore they people aren't going to see them as a prophet anymore. So what good is a prophet who tells you he makes a mistake but then won't tell you when he made a mistake or what mistakes he's made so that you can clearly understand the difference?
One of the mysteries again. And I love the part about we throw God under the bus to defend bad practices. And I've talked about it before, but at the B1 celebration in the conference center for the lifting of the priesthood ban, I saw that firsthand when President Oaks got up and said, we don't know why. It was God. We don't know, but now it's all okay. So again, it was God who wanted this discrimination to happen, not, and we all know that's not right. If you haven't read Matt Harris's book, Second Class Saints, you read that. It's 12 angry men arguing, trying to put it together. But the public persona and the line is, it was God. It wasn't us. So again, it keeps that idea of sort of we're perfect. We should be worshiped for everything that we do. It keeps that intact, I think.
And they can default to, God has his reasons and we don't understand. So when you die, then you'll find out. So just have faith.
Yeah. And in his time, which I would point to the November 5th, 2015 policy, excluding the children of, LGBTQ married partners, where God made that decision. And then 3 years later, God changed his mind.
Reversed
You know
it.
how
Mhm.
little amount of time that is in the scope of eternal time as we're supposed to understand it? Why would God do that? It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a non-existent increment of time. So,
Mhm.
Maybe God stutters.
oh my goodness. I don't know. You do start thinking weird things like that. All right, let's move on. So speaking as a man, so definitely sort of a hero worship thing if you're telling people I speak for God, right? And we can give these examples of other leaders where more negative consequences happened when people believe that somebody spoke for God. And I don't have to list probably those leaders. You probably know who I'm talking about. So another one I thought stood out is all the songs of worship. I have read posts from missionaries or people who've, come home from missions and said, I hated it when we would take an investigator to church. And what song did they sing for the opening hymn? Praise to the man, right? So right away, the investigators called friends now are like, what do you mean praise to the man? Where's praising Jesus? This is a crazy church. So I think music plays a huge part in it. So we have praise to the man. It says it's hard to say we don't worship Joseph when we have that song. Praise and worship aren't always synonymous, but often are. The lyrics lean too much that way. And if you really listen to those lyrics, if you sing them, it's very uncomfortable and I believe this will be in the new hymn book still. I've heard that it's carrying over. I think there was some question, maybe it would or wouldn't. So I think that shows everybody which way we lean. The song Follow the Prophet, right? In the primary, Follow the Prophet. And I don't know if everybody knows, if you haven't been in primary forever, they write a new verse for each new prophet,
How do they?
They do. Yeah. The same.
Oh boy.
I was a primary pianist forever. That was where I kind of relegated myself to be safe, quote, quote, no. And they would give you the new lyric. And so you're playing da, 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 da. Nelson was a prophet, da, 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 new one. Oakes was a prophet. Dude, I can't even imagine. In fact, I feel like Colt, you and I could probably write something.
They have to die before they write it?
What?
Is that right? Okay, the prophet has to die. Maybe
Do
we
they
could write
die, or
Nelson's
is it
before
when
he
they're new?
passes away.
When they're a new prophet.
Oh, so when they're new, they write a verse more.
Because you think they'd have to do some stuff to write about first.
I think so. Well, and if anybody calls me on this, maybe it was just my ward. Maybe there was a rogue person who put something in, One of the last verses I remember is something about the news. If you don't believe me, you just watch the news. Do, 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 do. Monson was a prophet. Yeah. I think
they say Nelson was a prophet, made Mormon a slur.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So anyway, definitely the songs are something that indicate that we're definitely, there's some kind of adoration going on. We thank thee, O God, for a prophet, right? That's sung every time a prophet walks in. It's always sung at General Conference. And we listen to a prophet's voice. Come listen to a prophet's voice. There's a few new songs I've heard coming out that also have that sentiment. Follow the counsel of the prophet. I won't go astray if I listen to the prophet, this kind of stuff. So, which doesn't seem weird to us at all. I mean, we grew up with that, those of us raised in the church, and it doesn't seem weird. It's only when you see it through the eyes of someone else, or you bring an investigator or a friend to church and they're like, well, who are we singing to? What's a prophet? That you realize other people don't have this.
No, I mean, we grew up with these guys' pictures on our wall in our house that you would see every single day. So of course it's normal to us.
No, I know. And I found some of those I'm going to show, which I think you'll really like. So let's go to our next slide, because I think I got some. Remember the song Latter-day Prophets? I don't know if you were in primary, but it's the list of the prophets named Latter-day Prophets are number 1, Joseph Smith, then Brigham Young, John Taylor, and it goes on and on, da, 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 da. But again, the kids know this. They can list all the prophets back to Joseph Smith. They can list the pedigree. I found, oh my gosh, I've seen these in person, nesting dolls of the prophets, right? So, and it's interesting because President Nelson is the second biggest only to Joseph Smith. So I don't know what you had to do to be, who is that? I'm not sure
the
exactly.
The tiniest is probably Howard W. Hunter, because he served the littlest time.
But anyway, I actually feel like it would be interesting if I got some of those and just displayed them back here, because I think they're kind of awesome. But you have the pictures, of all the past prophets dressed in white. You have Jesus visiting the prophets. There's this idea that just being in the club of the prophets, it's pretty dang special. Yep, let's go to the next one. Oh, okay. this is AI I made too. And I've told the story before, but this is one of my moments where I realized, oh my gosh, we really do worship the prophet in our church. I was in primary, as I said, as a primary pianist, and we were singing Follow the Prophet. And they chose a little child to hold a broomstick up with a picture of the prophet on it, just like this. I can't believe I got AI to make this. And they had all the other little kids line up behind this kid. And they asked me as the primary pianist to play faster and faster. Da 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 da, faster, faster, faster. And the kids marched around and the kid raised his broom up and down and singing and chanting. And I just had this moment where I was like, okay, primary is not a safe place. In fact, I think primary might be one of the worst places. And I saw it through the lens of someone else looking at this. And I just thought they'd think we were a cult. They really would. It was a very disturbing moment that I can't let go. Can I, Landon? I tell it in like every other podcast, don't I?
You do, but it perfectly illustrates the point, because when you've got children learning this from, what chance does the child have of actually choosing this person as a leader, or saying this person represents the values and the thoughts that I believe in, when they're taught this from being a child? But when they get to be an adult, it's already so ingrained.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And music is a huge part of it. A lot of people that leave the church, they say the very last thing that's left in their brain that they can't kind of exercise out are these songs that just pop in at any time. And they're still there. The repetition, the sing-songness, the songs, and also the encouragement our whole life. Just sing a hymn. They're still in there. And a lot of them say, follow the prophet, or we thank thee, O God, for a prophet. Let's look at our next slide. I think I have an example of this that I found. Oh, yes, here we go. Here is a video of many different groups of people. We'll play a little bit so nobody gets too triggered, but there is a point to this. Let's see if we can get this to load faster than the other one, huh?
That's right. I don't know.
I think you have to hit the end button. Showing people all over the world.
There is hope smiling brightly before us. Vencido será Satanás. De Dios no dudamos.
This is a general conference where we get to hear from the prophet. And all over the world represented, all different groups of people. Faithfully showing their worship through music. Broadcast during conference where everybody was all over the world. Germany singing in all different languages where they're worshiping the prophet. Here's New Zealand. We thank you, God, for a more, but I didn't think we probably needed to watch more to get that point across.
Yeah,
and I thought, okay, this is interesting. I've seen other videos of other leaders being worshiped by song. So Landon found this one, didn't you, Landon?
I did. Yep. Let me move to the next one here. You
have to go to the next slide, though. There you go.
Oh, gee. North Korea. I
have to say the song's a little better, a little more upbeat.
All right.
Again, groups of people all over the country, all walks of life, all professions, gathered, singing praises to their leader. Of course, this is a political leader, but also, Landon, wouldn't you say a religious, everything.
This is clearly, North Korea is a cult society of leader worship. Absolutely. They believe that he was born on a sacred mountain in Korea, even though we know where they were born at. They teach that he was born on a sacred mountain of a virgin and came down at, and song is a very strong way to manipulate and to drive people to think. I think of my time in the military. They put a picture every time that there's a new president. They put a picture in the barracks and in your offices of the new commander in chief. You always know who the commander is. They put a picture of the brigade commander. They put a picture of the battalion commander. You always know who your chain of command is and who you're going to receive orders from and who you are to obey. But we never sang a song about them. We will follow our leader, whatever he says. In fact, you're taught, they teach you the rules and they say, if you're ever told to do this, that is contrary, and you are to ignore that because it is contrary to what the Geneva Convention is, what the laws of war. You do not do that regardless of who tells you that. But this is, plain hero worship. We follow the leader. We sing songs about him. They show happy people. And you think about it, if these people aren't happy and aren't singing about the dear leader, their family disappears. And that's the same thing that happens in the church. If you don't follow the prophet, your family disappears. You don't go to the celestial kingdom, as you saw the young boy being taught right there. We go to the celestial kingdom if we follow him. If we don't follow him, we don't end up with our family. And it's the same thing here. Your family's going to disappear and you're going to be put in a concentration camp. Now, obviously, we say, that's ridiculous. That's not how the church is. What happens if we don't follow the prophet? We end up in outer darkness. We end up in hell. We end up in spirit prison. Yes, we do. We end up in the exact same place. We're fearful for our eternal damnation. They're scared about their current damnation, that they'll be damned. But it's the same process and it's the same tactics that are being used to do a cult worship of a leader.
Yeah, song is powerful. I think that's the bottom line. Song is very powerful. In fact, I always tell the story. I don't know how many of you remember in the late 80s or the 90s, President Hunter was giving a fireside at BYU when a gentleman named Cody Judy stormed the stage with something in his hand. And he said, I have a bomb. I have a bomb. And he ran up to the stage and he kind of tussled and grabbed President Hunter, who kind of fell backwards, and the secret, sacred service came up. It was just a chaos. And everybody in the Marriott Center rose and started singing, "We thank thee, oh God, for a prophet," to kind of, just push back on what was happening. It was a very powerful moment. I wasn't there because I didn't go to firesides, but I was told it was a powerful moment. I was at BYU at the time. Of course, Cody Judy later said that by saying I have a bomb, he just was using the abbreviation for Book of Mormon. He was trying to hand a Book of Mormon to President Hunter. So it's an interesting scenario. But again, the power of music. Nobody knew what to do. And so they just stood up and started singing about their support for the prophet. So interesting. All right, let's move on. There's so much to talk about on every single topic here. We have a few more to go through. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay. So the idea of standing up when a leader enters the room. And again, this is cultural sometimes. Cultural. This exactly. But sometimes I feel like it's done maybe to death when it shouldn't be done all the time. Do you want to read this, Colt?
Sure. You want to do the whole thing?
Yeah, just do the whole thing.
Okay. When the respect of standing for an authority is mandated, it really only shows compliance and obedience. If people felt that kind of respect, they would do it without being told. They wouldn't be chastised by the authority if they didn't heed the custom. I remember being at a meeting of bishops at the stake presidents where apostles presided. We were required to be in our seats early. Fine. Then the apostle would enter and we would all stand. To me, it seemed the apostle needed the adoration of making an entrance. So 2 things that came from this. Where do you draw the line? I've been told to stand for a 70 member by a mission president, but when the prophet's there, we don't stand for the apostles. It's not like we're standing for our stake presidents or bishops, so why 70s? And two, like I said, part of my mind realizes that it's a sign of respect and unity. But at the same time, part of my mind points to this thought. It seems quite at odds with let him who is great among you be your servant injunction of the Savior, in my opinion. He specifically spoke in Mark 9:35 about he who should be first should be last, and set the example of washing the feet of his disciples.
Yeah. And this was a post from, I think, Faithful or Nuanced site where people say, yeah, I think it can kind of get out of control, but it's definitely something that indicates worship, or you should worship me, you should stand. And of course, we do have anecdotal evidence, especially certain apostles that just really insist on it, that they must stand first. No one can stand before them. And in fact, if we go to our next slide, and I think most of you have seen this, but we have Elder Bednar, where his wife kind of forgets that rule, right? Just normally you're going to get up, but then realizes, nope, we know the rule. You do not stand up before Elder Bednar.
After the recent worldwide devotional, Susan Bednar almost stood up before her husband did. According to Mormon culture and tradition, no one should stand before the apostle does. You can see her initially start to stand, and then she catches herself and looks around a bit and realizes she has to wait for her husband to stand, period. The entire room is also waiting for the apostle to stand. Whew, crisis averted. We see that once the apostle stands, then she has permission to stand, and the rest of the people in the room then have permission to stand. In Mormonism, authority demands respect. Respect requires deference. A wife's position will always be less than and beneath that of her husband's. Discover more observations about Mormonism at Thoughts on Things and Stuff.
I thought that's a good one. Yeah, not only the wife, but everybody had to wait, right? You wait, and they knew they had to wait. Had you guys seen that before? You'd probably at least heard of it. Issues.
Yeah, you think Susan has to wait at home? David has to stand up from the dinner table first before she can stand up?
I think so. I really do. I think that carries into the home life. So, and again, like that, the comment on social media said, when you're told to do it, when you're kind of know that you have to do it, is that respect, or you're just being obedient and following orders? This is one of the greatest examples I've seen of somebody that wouldn't even really enter the room until people gave the respect he was due. And this is Elder Stevenson. And I knew this was out there. I couldn't find it. Culch, who knows everything, of course, he was able to point us in the right direction. But this is just great if you want to watch this.
See how long this one takes to load as well.
It takes a second, I know, doesn't it? And then you have to hit play if it's on pause. So
this is from Jonathan Streeter.
It is from Jonathan
He doesn't do a whole lot these days.
To another episode of White Supremacy Neocolonialism. Today's episode is an event in Madagascar where we are awaiting Elder Gary Stevenson of the Quorum of the 12, who should be showing up. I think if you look at the people in the audience, they're all sitting. They don't seem to realize just who has entered the room. And we have the flag being thrown by the 70. Let's see that in a replay. Here we go. Yes, he's giving them the hand signal. The members of the audience have not shown the appropriate obeisance by being standing. The apostle has attempted to save face by making chit-chat with the white nerds that they have brought with them to do all of the AV and streaming equipment. He's pretending not to notice that the audience did not have the sagacity to be standing 30 minutes prior to his arrival. So he's turned his back to the audience so that he doesn't have to see the lack of respect that they showed him. And now that he can make his real entrance, everybody has been asked to stand, and he can enter without the embarrassment of having the audience not already be standing. He's about to survey the audience, giving them nods of approval for showing the proper respect for someone of his position. He looks around to make sure that, everybody is standing, that there are no stragglers. He's doing the usual. He's having a bit of a moment just so that people can understand for whom they are standing. It looks like somebody may have committed a foul. There's a person wearing a casual jacket in the audience. Fortunately, he had the wisdom to be at the back. Oh, he's signaled them to sit. They all stood until they were given permission to sit by the white man in authority. Is given the opportunity to look down on the audience and give them the chance to bask in his aura. He knows that they have lived their entire lives hoping for the opportunity to stand in the presence of someone as great and amazing as himself. So we are going to leave now as they continue their meeting. This is the way the game is played.
Oh my goodness. That was just as horrible and wonderful as I remembered it. So thank you for finding it back, Coach. But again, would you want people standing up for you if they didn't think to do it on their own? I mean, yeah, doesn't that just take the point of it away?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, who cares? Just go in there and do your training. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's ego.
Yep.
That's a tradition in the military, is you're required to stand up when the commander comes into the room, and you stay standing until he comes. But again, that's from a point of, I have the authority. I am the one in command. I am the one in charge. And it's to remind everyone, this is the person who's in charge. That's the same thing they're doing here. They're trying to say, this is the person in charge and you need to stand for them and respect their authority. But this isn't an army. This is a church. This is
it's God's army
where we serve each other, where we're servants, where we're all equal in the eyes of God. The military makes you are not equal to the 5-star general when you are a lieutenant or a private or anything else. You are not equal to him, and they make sure you know that.
Yeah.
The church tells you that we're all equal, and yet there's this whole other level of, these guys are super special.
And it's not like they train the members to do this. It's like when that story of Oaks who rebuked the kids for taking the sacrament with their left hand instead of there's just these arbitrary little rules that aren't taught, yet they expect people to understand them and follow them.
Yeah, because I think they know teaching those arbitrary rules are a bad look. You must stand when they come in the room. Do not use your left. It just starts to sound a little bit culty. So they just kind of have that passed on kind of word of mouth, or you just look around and you're like, okay, everybody else is standing. And I've been in the room and the prophet has come in before. I've been to conference and everybody does stand up. You don't even think about it. But this video just killed me because the people weren't thinking about it. They were just there. And yet the guy going like this, do you know who's here? No, I don't know. Well, you should.
I wouldn't recognize him. I came to see him and I wouldn't recognize him.
And the fact that he would not enter. I love that. Talking to the nerds. I just love that. I hope everybody rewinds. Jonathan Streeter is incredible. So
I wish he would do more. He needs to do more.
Yeah. You also have to look at the way he acted. He's back there making small talk with everyone as if, they all will wait until I am ready. And when I am ready to speak, then they will listen. But until then, they can wait. What I'm doing is more important than what this entire audience is doing out here. And you saw the same thing. Once he had them sit down, him and the 70s sit there and chat while everyone just sits there and looks at him like, well, what are we supposed to do right now? There's no respect for the time of the people that are sitting there, or him going around and shaking hands and chatting with them. He can't touch them. He has to remain up where they can't touch even the hem of his garment. Are they allowed to do that?
I think it's the difference between being a man of the people, kind of a leader, who are naturally beloved, and then somebody that sets yourself up as you will, love me, or you will worship me. And that never works. You have to show by your actions that you love people, and then they'll love you back. I think that's how it works. So yeah, the other thing I think, and I have so many stories about this, I'll try to cut them down, but the use of the full title and the initial. Now, I was raised in a household where you said, our beloved prophet, David O. McKay. That was my first prophet. Our beloved prophet, Howard W. Hunter. OBP. OBP. I should have just shortened it with that acronym. But yeah, we always said the full name. That in itself is problematic. Everyone has the name of president, right? There are so many presidents, and now the women are presidents too. It's just ridiculous. There are more presidents than there are not presidents. You always have to use the full name. You get in trouble if you don't use the full name. You have to include the initial. That has to be there too. And you say, a dear leader, our beloved leader. So the reason I have this picture here at Thanksgiving is that I was once at Thanksgiving with a relative who was a faithful member of the church. And I was telling about something that I'd read in the church magazine. We just had a big debate on whether it was Ensign, Ensign. So I'll just call it church magazine because I'll come down on the wrong side of it. But it was something written by President Monson. And I was speaking favorably. And I said at the dinner table, yeah, so Monson, he brought up this point that our host, my relative, he stopped eating. He goes, in my house, we don't say just Monson. We say our prophet, President Thomas S. Monson. I mean, he just shut me down, completely shut me down. And I was making a positive comment. I was talking about something that I thought he'd said that was good in the church magazine. I mean, it literally shut me down. And we all just left very quickly after, I had no desire, because once it's kind of like what they've done now to us with the word Mormon. You're just shut down. Of course, you're still going to say Mormon. It's just ingrained in us. And then for people to just shut you down, you just can't, you don't engage anymore. So that idea that you can't say Nelson or then Oak said, it has to be the full name, it's just ridiculous. Do you guys have any experiences like that?
No, but I'm with you. If you use a last name, or even if you don't put the middle initial, people are like, it doesn't sound right to them. And I think there's that feeling of unease that makes them want to correct you.
Yep. Our beloved leader.
I know a lot of presidents of different organizations. We have presidents of our company. We don't call them president so-and-so. When you see them, you call them by their name, that's what they go by. Now, certainly when they're signing things or an email, they'll put, president, so that by what authority that they're signing it or what their position is. But I don't know anyone who goes by the name president other than the president of the United States. But I think the church has to try to make the argument, well, this man's more important than the president of the United States, and so are his counselors. And again, I don't know any organization that has 3 presidents. They're usually called vice president or, vice presidents, but to have 3 presidents.
Is there historical precedence for that? Precedent for the president? I mean, was everyone a president in the early church? Or I just kind of picture it as, these are all punky kids setting up the church. They're in their 20s. They're like, well, if you're a president, I'm a president, And then they just create he was giving away titles like candy, right? To attract followers. Everybody gets a title. Like Oprah said, you're the president and you're the president and you and you and you are the president. So it doesn't seem weird to us, against being raised in the church, but to anybody on the outside going, well, why is everyone a president? It just is so pretentious when you start looking at it.
Yeah, you don't see the president of the PTA organization being called president. You don't see the student body president being called, President Marcy J. Smith or whatever her name is, You don't use that title anywhere except for in politics to represent the actual president of the United States. The president is the only place we in the United States use that. But in the church, we call everybody president. So
everybody's a president. And even women, like I said, now lip service kind of to make women feel important, they kind of tack on that president label. I mean, it doesn't mean anything because you're rotated in and out so quickly, even at the more upper levels. And you're certainly not meeting with any of the actual presidents. So, but they do make a point to really say that President so-and-so.
Well, the church has learned the same thing that kings learned a long time ago, that if you give someone a title, they will feel like they're important, and they will fall in line with you because you gave them the title and you give them the power. So they hand out titles like candy, it's like, you see, the Duke of Cornwell, the Lady of they just keep giving out titles. And every time you do something, you get a new title. And the more titles you have, the more important you are. And the church has figured that out, and they play that same game.
Well, I mean, look at the what we read at the top of the episode where we read about the Cody thing. Those were fifth quorum of area rep of something, and they were president so-and-so and president so-and-so. So, all right. So whether or not that means we worship, I don't know, but there sure are a lot of presidents. We'll make that a point there, I think. All right. What other examples did we come up with? Oh, okay. This is a good one. And, this plays into being a leader, that there's no negative feedback to you at all. What position does that put you in? You want to read that, Landon?
Oh, yes. Just as soon as I finish my drink. We aren't allowed to criticize anything in the church without being met with attacks. I would occasionally disagree vocally with things in the church, mainly polygamy and racism as a TBM, and then other issues as a nuanced member. And I was often met with accusations such as not supporting and or speaking evil of the Lord's anointed, and how that could lead me astray.
Yeah, and again, these are things that I've kind of data scraped from social media posts. So these are people talking about their own experiences with this. And of course, we have the quote that Elder Oaks gave us. It is wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true. A very dangerous precedent and quote. And I think we saw that with Nemo's Court of Love that just happened. Was it just yesterday? Oh my gosh, it's such a blur. Again, he is bringing up points that are very valid and truthful. He has the receipts for everything. And yet simply bringing them up has landed him in this position. So even if it's true, there's nothing you can do. So what kind of leader does that sound like, Landon?
Yeah, anyone who's afraid of criticism seems to know that they're, in a spot of weakness. You should be able to take the criticism and weigh it. And sometimes you have to make a choice despite the criticism. You're always going to get criticism when you're a leader, and that's perfectly natural. But to be unwilling to take criticism and excommunicate someone, you can molest a child. I think you can murder. I'm not sure, some of these people that ended up being murderers, the Daybells and whatnot, I don't know how long it took for the church to excommunicate them. But boy, you criticize a leader. When Bill Rill spoke out, he was excommunicated quickly. We see the same thing with many of the other. Sam Young is excommunicated, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, Sam was right. We need to fix this." But they excommunicated him. And I know for me, this was a turning point. I remember sitting in church, and I was we were talking about blacks receiving the priesthood, and everyone was saying, "I remember it was such a wonderful day when that happened. I can remember we'd been waiting for it. We knew that it would be changed. We knew it was wrong." And I'm going, then why didn't anybody say anything if everyone thought it was wrong? Because nobody said anything about it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I decided I'm never going to be that person that's afraid to stand up for something that's wrong and just sit by while they do something that I feel is wrong. And that's why I'm on a podcast now.
I was going to say, and here you are.
and see people say something is right that is clearly wrong, and not stand up and say something.
That's classic gaslighting. Like, think about the word Mormon, how that was fine in the church for, over 100 years. No one had a problem with it. Everybody used it. And then as soon as it was changed, the narrative goes, I can't believe we use that word. That word is so terrible. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they'll tell you that in posts, all snarky and flippant. It's just crazy they do this. And Oaks, all the leaders need, like Landon said, they need to be open to criticism. As a leader, you're going to get it. You need to be able to accept it. And some of it's probably valid. And maybe you'd be able to do a better job if you took that criticism and really thought about it critically and took it to heart. But they don't seem to do that. It seems like when you push against the leaders, like Nemo has, like Bill did with Elder Holland, you kind of pass this point of no return. and the only thing they're going to do is kick you out.
All the great changes in the church came as a result of criticism from outside or within the church. Polygamy, blacks in the priesthood, the November 15 policy, the child interviews, all of this stuff is coming from the outside, and they see the criticism, but they won't accept it. They won't accept any responsibility. They won't even admit that, even though they're not infallible, they won't tell you, we made a mistake there, and we've listened to you guys, and we're making a change. We think that's the right thing to do after we've prayed about it. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. No, it's excommunicate the person who brought it to our attention first, and then we'll make the change and claim the Lord told us about it.
Yeah, and I would even change the word criticism. It's input. Another person we haven't mentioned is Natasha, right? Natasha Helfer, who simply said, look, some of the things that you're telling kids, it's messing with their sexuality. It's not accurate. You guys need to study up on this. You are really causing some problems, and it's very irresponsible. The advice that you're giving kids as they're maturing and growing, that's input. That's not criticism. She is a family therapist, a sex therapist. She knows these kinds of details and information. She's giving input, not criticism. A good leader would say, okay, let's look at our programs. Let's look at number one, we shouldn't be talking to the kids at all about this, but she was just trying to stop harm from her professional perspective with input, not criticism. And of course, she was outcast also. So yeah, it really makes you question and wonder when you have a leader that there's absolutely no way to get any information to, any opinion, not reach at all, which is so funny. Some of the people, the residents that we work with in our temple busting, they're like, well, what's an address? How can we write like to the prophet or the upper leaders and tell them how this is impacting them? And we just laughed. Exactly, Cults. We're like, no one can write them. It's a loop. You can't do anything. Even as a member, if you write them, it comes back down to your local leader, and then you have to deal with him. And why did you write this letter? There is no person you can deal with. Anybody that they send to these towns to talk about temples, not a decision maker, not a leader. Those leaders are in an ivory tower where they're very isolated from the real world and any real information or input, or as they call it, criticism. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. So, okay, no criticism. I think we all agree on that one. That's a good one. Ooh, here we go. So I love this. The words of the living prophet are the mic drop, right? This is kind of a new thing. And I think this is a thing that started since the internet, because prior to that, you could read maybe the old prophet's words. You couldn't really put them all together. Touch of the button, and we can get 10 contradictory statements from prophets, right? One said this, one said that. So they had to do something, right? They had to do something. It says the idea that the teachings of modern prophets are more important than all scripture. This seems questionable, because why would modern prophets need to teach anything contrary to the old ones? That's a very good question. Where it becomes a huge issue is that it means their words could be more important even than the words of Christ. And that's a social media post. Somebody had that perspective. So Cults, do you want to read this very famous quote that was only 2 conferences ago? It was not long.
Yes, I do. Unlike vintage comic books and classic cars, prophetic teachings do not become more valuable with age. That is why we should not seek to use the words of past prophets to dismiss the teachings of living prophets.
So what does that mean to you? I mean, how completely Teflon is the current prophet?
Super Teflon. It means anything before him is null and void. It's whatever he says in the here and now, that is all that matters. And we have literally seen this in the Nelson presidency, I think, more than any other recent, not during Hinckley, not during Monson, but Nelson has taken it and run with it.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Landon?
This Haney guy is one of my favorites because he's had several.
You have to say it like RFM, Mr. Haney.
Mr. Haney
from the old show Green Acres.
Several things where he says that, but again, that's ridiculous. What do we need prophets? What do we need scriptures for if all we're listening to is one guy? We should just ignore everything. That's how kingdoms work. The king comes in, or the dictator comes in and says, I don't care what the other guy said. This is what we're doing. And you all have to get on board. And that's a clear the very fact that you believe one thing one day and then somebody tells you something and you just automatically change and say, that's what I'm doing. That's a clear indication that you're in a cult. When you don't think through it or ask any questions, you just do it because that's what you were told to do.
Yeah, like the steeple doctrine. I think that's why so many faithful Mormons had to say, no way. You are trying to tell me that I've always known that the most important part of the temple was the height of the steeple? No way. Yet there were others who, within a week or two of being told that by the area rep in Texas, were at a town council meeting crying and the height, and it was so important. And the woman who held up the temple without a steeple and said, I
The
was
Boston
married
one.
in a temple
Her
without a
husband
steeple.
held it up.
Remember that? Was I married? Yes. Was my experience diminished? Hold up the sign, honey. Yes, it was. You know, they had just barely been told that the height made a difference weeks before, and yet they were so on board with it. So, and I've said this before, but I think it's really important. We had a guest on who was a never Mormon who kind of analyzes and studies Mormonism. And he said, you guys are a church of edicts. Exactly what you said, Landon. The new person comes up and he says this. No more Mormon. He says this. The height of the steeple is the most important. He says this. You live edict to edict, and you have to throw everything out away. And that's not how it works. That's not how human beings should work. And this person was really fascinated by that idea that there were millions of people that would hang on the every word of one leader and what came out of his mouth. And that was it. That was the only thing they saw, just like this. It was very foreign to this person. And I hadn't really thought of it that way. But now that I see it that way, like an edict, and like I said, conferences coming up, we're probably going to get some more edicts. It's the only way I can view it now.
Yeah. And honestly, if this is true, why does anyone have to listen to anything that Nelson says? Because as soon as the next guy comes along, that's all null and void. Unless the next guy wants some of that to still be in there.
No, that's a great point. And, you know, we just this week heard the arguments in the Huntsman tithing lawsuit. It was an en banc trial, en banc, I think is how you say it, in front of, I think, 11 judges. But they kept harping on the point. The church lawyer kept saying, you know, the only person that can speak for the church is the prophet, you know, because they didn't want any of these other statements by lower level people to be admissible. This is very simplistic the way I'm describing it, but it's so ironic because here's a lawyer saying the only person that can speak for the church is the prophet. And the judges, I think, not understanding the structure of Mormonism, were like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Your leader is the only one that can make the authoritative statements. So I say, that means at conference this weekend, we don't need to hear from anyone else. In fact, we shouldn't hear from anyone else, because if that's what they're arguing, that the prophet is the only one that can speak, he should do every hour of every session, and it should just be him the whole time. The other people we can dismiss if this is a true argument. Do you think I'm off base on that, Landon?
No, I 100% agree. In fact, I think I was the one that told you that, well, then why doesn't he be the only one who speaks? Because what everyone else says, we can just ignore. It's irrelevant. It doesn't come from God. Only what he says comes from God. So, but they all quote from him for their talks anyway. So I guess it's just like he's talking.
And we have a slide about that. The massive number of quotes. Maybe it's next. I don't know. I've lost track. There were so many reasons once I started talking. Okay, here's a good one. Landon, do you want to read this?
Yeah, we can't go to the, must support the prophet or lose your family is what the title says. We can't go to the temple without sustaining the prophet, AKA we can't be exalted with our families. What about when they do wrong? Do we have to sustain them 100% of the time? The question is, do you sustain them as prophets, seers, and revelators? But what about when they do say wrong things, even in formal talks where they should be speaking as a prophet?
And you brought this up in comparison to some of the way that other countries work, but this is it exactly. You can't go if you don't say he's the supreme leader. And if you don't go, you don't have your family with you in the next life.
Yep, that's exactly the carrot that they hold over your head, is that you won't be with your family if you don't sustain, if you don't have that temple recommend. So you must agree to support him.
Yeah. Had you ever thought of it that way, Coach? I had really, and I was like,
Well, temples are, you know, where you go, so families can be together, right? Forever. So if you're not allowed to go to the temple, how are you supposed to be with your family forever? So it's, they're holding them hostage, spiritually speaking.
Yep, it does. And you have to agree that the prophet is where the buck stops. You have to say that. You must sustain him or you can't get a temple recommend. So again, to me, that kind of falls into the category of worship. You know, he's He's the most important person as far as telling you what to do and who you follow. Otherwise, you can't go to the temple and your family won't be with you.
In effect, what they're doing is they're saying, that you must pledge allegiance to the leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying. If you don't pledge allegiance to the leader, you can't go.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. So that's a good one, I thought. Let's see, what else do we have? So we move on through these. There's so many. Okay. That's so funny. Okay. I put always, it says a more recent thing, and this is somebody on social media saying during their faith crisis, was when Nelson said that prophets always tell the truth. And we saw that in that video earlier where he said, I will never lead you astray, right? They always tell the truth. This is absolutely wrong. And it adds to the whole, we must always follow the prophet no matter what mindset. Mountain Meadows. It is precisely because we do care deeply about all of God's children that we proclaim his truth. We may not always tell people what they want to hear, but prophets are rarely popular, but we will always teach the truth, is what President Nelson said. And I had to put that little picture. You've seen that meme before. Those of you that are listening, it's that little girl kind of looking sideways, like, always. So yeah, there's this idea, as we discussed earlier, totally, you can trust him. He will never tell you anything that's not correct. You can and must do every single thing he says. Thoughts on that, Colt?
He did say he will always teach the truth. He didn't say he will always tell the truth.
I saw the same thing. But that's how
you were a good Mormon. I see what you did there. That's good. You're right. I fell for that. I took the implication. You're absolutely right. He will always teach that. Very good.
He didn't say he'd tell it. He'll teach it.
You're right. What do you think, Landon?
Well, I can think of when I was in the church and I was going, is the church spending my tithing money on this mall?
Right.
And President Gordon B. Hinckley got up there and said, no tithing funds will be used in this. And I said, well, I believe him, so it must not be. But, he made a little thing about reserve funds from the church, which were really from the interest from tithing, which are tithing dollars. So he completely misled. Lots of people said, oh, okay, as a result of, and that was the intent he was trying. He was trying to deceive us. And while technically being correct, he was trying to deceive. I can think of the case where they said that they got bad legal advice from their lawyers for signing off on the SEC thing.
Enzyme Peak,
Yeah, they absolutely made that decision. And we know that they were advised by the church's financial people that they needed to fix this on multiple occasions, and they ignored it. They are experts in this area, the men who are in the presidencies of these, business leaders from Stanford, and they can't do this. I mean, we've been lied to so many times. The November 15th policy, remember Nelson telling us that he was there when it became a prophecy and that he experienced it and that all the 12 knew this was from God. And then 3 years later, no, it was just a policy. It's a policy change, not a revelation. I can think time after time after time when I have not been told the truth.
Wow. Landon is getting spicy over this. So, but as we all should, right? Those of us that are old enough, remember, it's just back and forth, back and forth. It's so hard to keep track. All right. So there's that issue of your leader will always tell you the truth. Do exactly what he says. No questioning. And this reminds me of one of my favorite Star Trek episodes where they actually talk a robot into self-destructing, because Captain Kirk says about Harry Mudd, who's on the right, Harry always lies. And then Harry says, listen carefully to me, to the robot. I am telling the truth. And the robot goes, but you always lie. So, but you said you're telling the truth, which means you're lying, but you always lie. So you are, and he basically can't compute it and his head explodes. So sometimes I feel like that's how we members are when we're told they're always telling the truth. But in this case, is it? But is it a lie? But if they tell us they're always telling us the truth, but yet I think they're lying, does that mean that the lie is it's just too much? Our heads are going to explode, just like this poor robot. So anyway, RFM is probably the only one that'll get this. All right, here we go. Every member stocking stuffer. How many books? Like I went on Deseret Book. There are more than this. And there's only a few here that are written about him. Most of these are written by him. Every single one. Heart of the Matter is one where he goes through all of his journal entries from the past And we learned that on June 9th, 79 or 8, he and his wife had their second anointing. He puts awesome stuff like that in there. But these are all books by President Nelson, some about him. And if your parents are like my parents, everybody bought these. I mean, maybe you guys did too. I don't know, as adults. But these are, you're really encouraged to buy these. And these are pushed by Deseret Book.
Yeah, I'm happy to say I never bought one.
Yep.
Good for you. You have the power.
I don't think I read any
that's
of
exactly
these.
right.
Yeah.
Did you buy some of these for your mom, Landon? And she was
I will buy them for family members that are into it, but I was more into the doctrine than, someone's happy story about how important they were in their own life. I never really read those type of books.
Yeah. But if you revere and worship the prophet, you should have been buying these books above all else, right? Because their word is more important than the scriptures. So
see, I was more interested in reading Miracle Forgiveness and learning that masturbation would make me gay or something like that.
Okay.
That's what I was
some
reading.
people have personal issues. No.
I really like this title on his book. Wise Men and Women Still Adore Him, Russell Nelson.
Adore him, Russell Nelson. I didn't even catch that when I put that on the slide. That is really, I know, because him, who does him mean exactly?
Yeah, who is him that they adore?
I mean, what they should have done is put that in capitals with lowercase, and then it would have been obvious if it was a capital H, it was him as in Christ. But you're right. Men and women still adore him. Russell M. Nelson. There you go. I have
Hence
a feeling
the birthday
he might put
parties.
a font. I don't know.
Accomplishing the impossible,
so many
Russell M. Nelson.
What?
Accomplishing the impossible, Russell M. Nelson.
Now that we start reading through all of these, you're right. And then, of course, they have the new manual, The Teachings of Russell M. Nelson. That's new. And I don't understand that, because when he passes away, we'll just have to get rid of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Kind of strange. All right, let's go to our next one. So stocking stuffers, tons of books. And then, oh my gosh, I went over to Etsy just to see. I did this with Think Celestial. There's so much Think Celestial merchandise. I knew as soon as those two words came out of his mouth that he didn't even make up. We did a podcast on others have said that before. I mean, you can get a doormat, you can get bath towels, you can do this with Think Celestial. You can get everything. But here is specifically, I looked up Russell M. Nelson. You can get pictures of him praying. You can get things with his quotes on them. You can get quotes, 100 quotes prior to his birthday. That was a big one they were selling. His big thing about the 99 and the 1. Anyway, there's just tons. You can fill your house with Russell M. Nelson paraphernalia.
Pictures is another. Pictures is another big cult tactic building. In North Korea, every home is required to have a picture of the dear leader and his grandfather and his father both there, almost like the Godhead. That's the same thing. And how many Mormon homes do you go into where there's a picture of the prophet or the Quorum of the 12 hanging on the wall, so that everyone knows who it is that they are to take their orders from?
Yep. And I think, is that our next slide? Because I think we thought of that one for sure. Yes. Yep. Pictures in the strangest places. Look at this.
Oh my God.
Right over the toilet.
Bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Nothing I'd prefer better than looking into the eyes of the prophet as I take a leak.
I do not know what you're supposed to think. When I moved into one of my first apartments in college, there was that picture of the Savior on like resurrection morning. It was hanging right over the toilet with its arms out like that. And I was like, okay, that's really strange. But this is even stranger, President Nelson. And you're right. These charts that a lot of people have on their refrigerators, and their kids can name every leader. They're so proud of them. I saw a TikTok where it was like a 3-year-old or younger that could name every single apostle and a lot of the general authorities. It really just has that dear leader sense, doesn't it? With all the pictures. And I've seen lots of posts of people when they go into primary rooms or somewhere at church where there'll be pictures of all the apostles and then a little picture of Jesus kind of on the side, just a little picture. But it's definitely all about church leadership, I think, as far as the artwork.
For sure.
Yep. All right. Okay. Here's another thing I thought was really interesting, that you have to do everything they do, right? They're always coming out with things and you have to try to emulate them. This again, one of your favorites, Landon. This is one of my favorite. Exactly. Look at Culch. He's got it. We'll see if he can do it. Do you want to play this, Landon? just
Elder
following
Haney
their
again.
every move.
One day I walked into the cafeteria at church headquarters to have some lunch, and after getting a tray of food, I entered the dining area and I noticed a table at which all 3 members of the First Presidency were seated, along with one empty chair. My insecurities caused me to make a quick detour away from that table. And then I heard the voice of our prophet, President Russell M. Nelson, saying, "Alan, there's an empty chair right here. Come and sit down with us." And so I did. Near the end of the lunch, I was surprised to hear a loud crunching noise.
Was it
And when I
bone?
looked up, I saw that President Nelson had stood his plastic water bottle straight up and then flattened it and replaced the lid. President Dallin H. Oaks then asked the question I wanted to ask. "President Nelson, why did you flatten your plastic water bottle?" He replied, "It makes it easier for those who are handling recyclable materials because it doesn't take up as much space in the recycling container." While pondering that response, I heard the same crunching sound again. And I looked to my right, and President Oaks had flattened his plastic water bottle just like President Nelson. And then I heard some noise to my left, and President Eyring was flattening his plastic water bottle, although he had adopted a different strategy by doing it while it was horizontal, which took more effort than with the bottle straight up. And noticing this, President Nelson kindly showed him the bottle straight up technique to more easily flatten the bottle. At that point, I leaned over to President Oaks and I asked, "Is flattening your plastic water bottle a new recycling requirement of the cafeteria?" And President Oaks responded with a smile on his face, "Well, Alan, you need to follow the prophet." Now, I'm confident that President Nelson was not declaring some new recycling-based doctrine in the cafeteria.
Oh, I'm pretty confident on that too. We can stop
But
it
we
there. Yeah, exactly. Again, this story is okay for me because they are sort of bringing up recycling and taking care of the earth, right? Which they never do. But again, Coach, what do you think? I mean, seriously, like every little thing, and none of them have ever heard of crushing. Anyway, so much.
No, and it shows you that if they're willing to follow something that small and
Right.
insignificant, you know, if he says something bigger, even if it's not something appropriate or something most people would do, they're going to jump at it and they're going to do it.
Mountain Meadows. I
Right?
keep coughing and saying that, but that's where you end up. That's like the very dark side of this prophetic worship, right? That you will do anything that a leader says, even something that you would never do. And that's the very dark side. So what do you think, Landon? Still love that story of the water bottle. I still do.
No, I love it because to me it demonstrates completely the opposite of what he was trying to show, that you should just follow the prophet because he did it. And I see the complete danger in I will do whatever that guy does no matter what. And it's funny because Oaks questioned him.
He did. He said, "Why are you doing that?" That's right. Well, as we suspect, Oaks has kind of been the power behind the throne for a while. So maybe that's part of that. But yeah, just that idea. And you'll see things on social media, you know, President Nelson did this or said, you know, and people just do. They want to do what he's doing. They're following his every move. I think we see that everywhere. So, okay, a prophet by any other name. Do you want to read this one, Colch?
Sure. There is definitely an inappropriate level of idolization within the church. I feel like it is at an all-time high. Some of the recent General Conference talks feel like a thankamony to President Nelson and the great things he has done for the church. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has not escaped people's notice, has it? How many times more than any other prophet? And some people have crunched those numbers. I think we have that on the next slide. Let's see. Okay, this is super interesting. Landon, do you want to read this? I thought this was fascinating.
Okay, it's a little long, but I'll go through
It is a little long. You can do it.
Yep. I recently made a discovery which I found interesting regarding Nelson's inability to quote past presidents of the church.
And let me just stop you there for a second. This is what we're talking about. While everyone quotes Nelson, Nelson himself does not quote anybody else, even from the past. I find that extremely interesting.
Yep. I've listened to or read every single talk from Nelson since his becoming president of TSCC, the church, in 2018. It became evident very quickly that the man almost never refers to any past church presidents in his discourses. I compiled every talk that he has given in General Conference since April 2018. Then I read each one and made a note of every time that he quoted a past president of the church. Then I scanned every reference in his talks, those which he himself provides at the bottom of each, to see if I missed any. Here I made an interesting discovery. Nelson has quoted past presidents of the church by name only 9 times in 5 years. Those he has quoted include Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, George Albert Smith, Harold B. Lee, and Ezra Taft Benson.
The old
He has
prophets.
never once quoted Gordon B. Hinckley nor Thomas S. Monson, which is important when you remember the feud he had over
Yeah.
the name Mormon when they straightened him out on
Yeah,
that.
it's all the old
Mhm.
prophets. They're not a threat. They're nobody in recent memory. They're the older ones.
He makes frequent reference to the teachings of past presidents without naming the one he is referencing. I discovered this by checking his references. 14 times Nelson includes in his references some teaching from a past president, never mentioning that president's name in the discourse itself. An example of this occurs in 2018 talk, Becoming Exemplary Latter-day Saints, wherein he quotes Joseph Smith but fails to mention his name. I assure you that revelation continues in the church and will continue until the purposes of God shall be accomplished and the great Jehovah shall say the work is done. If one were to listen to that talk, it would seem that Nelson himself is the great creator of such words, but he is not. In most of these cases, however, he does not quote the past president, but mentions some teaching or doctrine in his own words. I decided to compare these numbers to the most recent president of the church, Thomas S. Monson. He served as president of the church for 10 years from February of 2008 to January of 2018. His numbers were much different. Monson quoted past presidents by name 42 times. Not even one time did he reference a past president without citing him by name in the talk. He quoted his predecessor, Gordon B. Hinckley, 8 times, frequently referring to him as beloved. I discovered one more thing which I find to be quite fascinating. I made a note of each time Nelson includes a reference in one of his talks to one of his own past talks or teachings. Upon doing the same research on the discourses of Thomas S. Monson, I found an alarming disparity. In 10 years of General Conference talks given as president of the church, Thomas S. Monson made reference to one of his own past talks 0 times. Nelson, in 5 years as president, has referenced himself 18 times. References like this can be seen in this talk by seeing the attached references, and he's got a link. The data confirms my hypothesis that Nelson does not pay much attention to the teachings of past presidents. He does, however, pay much attention to his own teachings. I think perhaps that it is his opinion that he is the one true prophet, the only prophet with whom we have to do. His never having quoted Monson or Hinckley is especially surprising, given that the church tends to prefer the teachings of recent prophets to those of the past. He has an ego the size of the church itself, except his is not shrinking.
I just thought this was great. I know it was longer. And again, this was on social media and I don't know who made this. It was just a post. So if it was you and you want to let everybody know, come forward in the chat, send me a message. But I just thought this was great. Doesn't quote others, quotes himself, and I think anecdotally, we all kind of thought that was happening, but to have somebody go through and sit down and say, is that surprising to you, Coach, at all?
No, this is, I mean, you guys got a huge ego, like the person who wrote this said. I think we all knew that. So it's one of those things that we probably felt was true. And now we have the data to back it up.
Yep. No, I thought this was great. Thanks for reading that, Landon. I know it was long, but I thought really, really relevant. So, okay. And I think the next slide, we just crunched a few of the numbers and yeah. So 6 of his 8 conference talks as President Russell M. Nelson he's been mentioned more than, in 6 of his 8 conferences, meaning General Conference, President Russell M. Nelson has been mentioned more than 95 times. That means in each conference, they're mentioning him that many times. Divide that by how many speakers. On average, his name has been mentioned 118 times during his tenure as president. And these stats are from, I think, 2 years or maybe even last year. So I think it's even gone up even the last, I think we could all have bingo cards where we just try to keep a running tally. And I know Nemo, I don't know if I have a picture of it. Did I put a picture in next? And wait, look at this. Go back one if you can. Yeah. Social media. Look, it got Nelson right. I mean, sorry, AI. It spelled it right, but the other one is Nelson, because it
And
never
Nissan.
can quite spell. I know, isn't that funny? Nissan, but it got Nelson, yay, mentions on AI. Okay, next slide. Did I include the Nemo one? No, I didn't. But we all know that Nemo does have that little Jesus, Joe, and Russell, meaning that he counts up each conference who is mentioned more, Joseph Smith, Jesus, or Russell Nelson. And Russell's always in the lead, if I remember, or at least a close lead.
Joseph's fallen completely out of grace.
Yes.
He's hardly ever mentioned anymore.
Hardly ever mentioned. No, I think we know what it's about. So another thing I put in here, just as, a revered leader, somebody that we worship, death-defying feats of greatness, right? And you talked about this, Landon, how perhaps leaders of more like countries or regimes, they're always put up as having miraculous things happen, right? And so I thought this was perfect example. Here it is right here. We're going to hear this story.
I was in a small airplane, and all of a sudden, the engine on the wing caught fire. It exploded, and burning oil was poured all over the right side of the airplane, and we started to dive toward the earth. We were spinning down to our death. Oh, this woman across the aisle, I just was so sorry for her. She was just absolutely uncontrollably hysterical. And I was calm. I was totally calm. Even though I knew I was going down to my death, I was ready to meet my maker. We didn't crash. We didn't die. The spiral dive extinguished the flame. The pilot got control and started the other engine up, and we made an emergency landing out in the field. But I thought through that experience, if you've got a faith, you can handle difficulties, knowing that with an eternal.
Oh my goodness, so many things wrong with that story, as we all know now. But again, it's some kind of death-defying, incredible miracle that is associated with the leader. And you're a pilot, Landon. What did you tell us about that? That's so funny.
Well, first of all, if you land in a field, you did crash. But we know that number one, the airplane did not catch on fire.
No.
It did not burn oil.
No.
I know Bill Rill and RFM did a complete episode on this, which they went to the FAA records and found out what happened. And it was a loose motor mount. So the motor would have been vibrating. A pilot would have shut the engine down. Twin engine planes are designed to fly on one engine. And as we learned, they they detoured to the nearest airport, which was Delta, Utah, and landed on the runway. They flew out another airplane. That airplane landed and picked up the passengers and took them. So I'm sure that the pilot, there would have been a shuddering, and then the pilot would have feathered the engine, and he would have said, we're diverting to another airport. But there was no spiral, there was no flames, there would be nothing that would alarm you as a regular person when the pilot is on there reassuring you. Now, he said, I knew I was going to my death. Well, you didn't go to your death, so yeah, you clearly didn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. You are now.
Yeah, the pilot would have come on and said, please, we're going to divert, we're going to make an emergency landing, but everything is under control. We're trained to do this, and we're going to make a landing. The plane's still under control. No issues. The pilot's going to do everything he can to calm down the people. So this story is just ridiculous, but it's made out to make him seem like he has all the faith in the world. Yeah. But again, prophet cannot, well, I guess he can lie. He can't teach us something that's not true, but evidently he can tell a story that's not true.
Yeah, and he's told the story in several different ways. Yeah. And I know you've covered this too, I think, Colt. Haven't you made a song about, you've done something with this, haven't you?
I don't know if I've done anything with this specifically.
Well, then I think that you should. This would be perfect. Yeah. And I think perhaps that then Brad Wilcox's story picks up right when this plane crashes, because we all know, as Nemo has posted recently, Brad Wilcox says, Once the plane crashes and is on the ground, then all the atheists stomp in the heads of everyone else as they run to the exits, right? Because, atheists aren't moral at all and they're not going to help. So, yeah.
And this was in like the 80s in Utah. So the chances are the lady that was screaming about going to her death was probably a member of the church, because
that's what they
was
pointed
80%.
No, they pointed out it was like a group going down, I think, to St. George. Anyway,
St. George.
I'm going to link that episode in the show notes, because that's an amazing episode from Mormonism Live, where they just go through every single detail. But the point here is that your leader has to be someone who has special knowledge, special faith. He's better than us in all these ways. He can overcome these incredible hurdles, these near-death experiences, and that's why we need to revere him. That's what I took away from those kinds of stories. So, and again, he's told this in several different versions, where once it's on fire and another one, there's different versions. It's kind of interesting. So, all right, let's move on. I think we're getting toward the end, believe it or not. And I bet all of you have things that you can mention that we've forgotten to mention. There's a lot here. Absolutely. So, okay, next slide. Here we go. All right. No questions. Don't ask questions. Coach, you want to read these 2 quotes or 3?
Sure. Yes. Please don't misunderstand. As you reach out for divine guidance, the Spirit will not inspire you to do less than follow the instruction received in the temple and the prophetic counsel shared by the First Presidency in their recent statement.
Yeah, now that's new. So, question, pray for divine revelation to get on board with whatever it is you may have a question about. And in the past, it was sort of like, yes, receive your own personal revelation. Just recently, and this one specifically is talking about garments, but I think it's going to be expanded to everything. You may get personal revelation, but it's not correct unless it absolutely tells you to do what they're telling you to do. And there's no way around that. So that's something new. And I wonder if they'll talk about that a little more in conference. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that right there. You can pray for personal revelation, but it's never going to tell you anything different than what the prophet's telling you.
When our leader speaks, the thinking has been done. When they propose a plan, it is God's plan. When they point the way, there is no other which is safe. When they give direction, it should mark the end of the controversy. God works in no other way. To think otherwise without immediate repentance may cost one his faith, may destroy his testimony, and leave him a stranger to the kingdom of God.
Again, my way or the highway. And that's a leader who's the kind of a leader that you're just not going to question ever. And you have to do exactly what he says. And then here's the most succinct way to say it. What does this one say, Colt?
When the prophet speaks, the debate is over.
Yep. I hear that all the time now. Don't you, Landon? I mean, there's so many things that people are questioning, even faithful members. This whole podcast started because I read something from a faithful member saying, we kind of look like we're hero worshiping. I hear this all the time, where it says the prophet speaks, the debate is over. Why do you think this is being used all the time now?
It's the message they want.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
They do not want to be questioned because they know that there is a ton of things out there that can be questioned that they are not going to have answers for. And we see it over and over and over. Whenever they send somebody out to answer, the Swedish rescue mission and others, they don't send the apostles. They don't send the prophets to give the answers. They send lower level people who they can say, well, they don't know because they're not apostles and prophets.
Right.
But they never put out the apostle or prophet to answer these questions because they know they can't, and they know they'll look foolish if they do. So the easy way to not run into this is not take any questions. If you don't take any questions, you completely control the narrative, and that's what they're trying to do.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And we have had incidents like Holland talking to the BBC where they say something that they're caught. People are taping things, people are taking note, and you can get caught. So you're right. Just don't let them speak. Don't let them keep a journal. They're not supposed to write things down. They just have to be kind of operating in a vacuum, just right there, 3-minute memory. And there it is. So, and
I've noticed when they do take questions, it's always youth groups.
Yes.
Where they're going to get the softball questions and they're pre-thought out. They submit the questions and then they pick the questions that they're going to read to them. So, yep.
And even conference that we're talking about, because it's coming up, those talks are prepared months in advance and they're vetted through correlation. The few times that something has been said that didn't go over, they will take that out for the article in the church magazine or the next time, that it's shown. And it's happened very few times, but it does happen because their addresses are really locked down and they're reading them off a prompter. So you're not going to have any off the cuff remarks. I mean, they have it locked down. So no questions, cannot question. All right, let's speed through the end here. I think we've got one or two. Okay, so this kind of leads us back just to President Nelson's birthday that kind of started this whole train of thought. And I think we all were kind of noticing with the 95th birthday, that was a big, lavish, incredible affair in the conference center. And I think then we were sort of like, wow, that's interesting. And they had that countdown clock. And then they did it again for 100. And I agree, 100 is a huge milestone. That is amazing. And it should be celebrated. But I just think some of the things that happened around this were just a little, can I say extra? Is that still a word people use? So I said, happy birthday, President Nelson. On September 9th, 1924, the Statue of Liberty was declared a national monument and President Russell M. Nelson was born. So that's what he shares his birthday with. I mean, I don't know if a lot of us realize how long ago that was. If you think of the world then, it's pretty incredible. Let's go to our next slide. We'll just kind of go over the events of the birthday as we close out here. So Culch, of course, this is why we always invite him on, because he's always like, hey, I'm going to make something just for this. We're like,
I did.
Debut it here. It's awesome.
I did it tonight.
So let's play Culch's video in honor of the 100th birthday.
Today's a big day for the current prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ.
Express exactly there, Culch?
Just that in my opinion, President Nelson doesn't have a whole lot of time left. But in his defense, I made a video just like this when he turned 99 and he's still around. So I got to make the 100.
You may be making one when he's 105. I'm not kidding. He seems to be,
possible.
Really hanging in there. So, but yeah, there was a lot of commentary on his birthday on all sides of the fence, I think. Let's go to the next one. I've covered it several times on different podcasts, and we'll just kind of close out with this discussion of the birthday. So, I made this little thing where he's jumping out of a cake. Mormon prophets and leaders worship themselves too. This is what I found on social media. Ta-da! Here we are,
crawling out of a cake.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was cute. I thought it looked great. So his birthday, as we kind of talked about before, Landon mentioned this at the beginning. If you go to the next slide, he started, I think it was like 100 days out. Yes, 100 days before his 100th birthday on September 9th, President Nelson posted a message on social media highlighting the parable of the lost sheep. And we saw some of that merch in our slide about the merch, where Jesus uses the number 100 to teach about love and service. Though 99 of his flock were safely by his side, the shepherd went in search of the one who was lost, President Nelson explained on a social media post. At age 99, I have no need of physical gifts. One spiritual offering that would brighten my life is for each of you to reach out to the one in our lives who may be feeling lost or alone. And actually, I think that's a good thing, except for I think that he meant, if you're a faithful Mormon, reach out to someone who's left, because I saw a lot of posts on social media going, is anybody getting contacted a whole bunch more? So I think that was happening. But overall, that's an okay message. Let's make sure that, we're always reaching out, and we don't even need a birthday invitation to do that. Were you guys aware of this little invitation 100 days prior?
Well, I didn't know it was 100 days, but I knew the whole 99 and find the one.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish I would have included this in the slide, but it led to all of these pictures of wolves, really scary, after one sheep, and this like badass Jesus running in to stop the wolves. I mean, they were crazy pictures, like from the cover of some kind of adventure novel. Did you see any of those, Landon?
Oh yeah, I saw them, and yeah, they were. They remind me of the Donald Trump cartoons that I see, where he's reaching out as the savior to, or missing the bullet. Sheep are coming, and it's that same vein. So
and now the pictures of him defending the dogs and the cats. I've seen those where he's running with dogs and cats. Get them out of there. Oh my gosh, can't go there at all. Okay, so we have the birthday invitation 100 days before, and then I did not know this, But somebody on social media, because I did post the question, do we worship the prophet? Right. I just thought that'd be interesting. I had lots and lots of responses, people weighing in about it. Some people are saying no, just no exclamation point. Right. I'm like, okay. But a lot of people gave more thoughtful answers. Somebody said they work at an airport and they were kind of freaked out to see, I think it was a whole family wearing the 100th birthday Nelson shirt. So I'm like going online going, is that real? It is. We could have gotten, isn't it too bad you missed this, Coach? You could have been wearing this for the last 3 months.
Man.
A unisex commemorative long sleeve tee, President Nelson's 100th birthday.
Wait a minute.
Maybe they'll.
How do you have one sex, unisex? I thought sex there was two and it was
Don't
universal.
go there. Don't do it.
Maybe they'll be
so
on
there were
clearance
birthday tees.
when he turns 101.
Yeah, I think so. We'll have to start ordering early. I'm sure they'll be there. But yeah, and they may still have some in stock. I mean, everybody try if you want one. That's great. So we have the invitation. We have the shirt. The momentum is just building. We have the countdown clock, which is on the front page of the church website, right? Ticking down the hours until the birthday. And then we also have the world record. Landon mentioned that they wanted to have President Nelson holding the Guinness Book of World Record for the most signatures on a birthday card. And so there was a big YSA conference and they had everybody sign it. You can see them. It's an actual physical card. They're all climbing the walls, trying to sign it. And then it says at the end of that, a total of 31,384 people signed the birthday card in the Salt Palace, and representatives from the Guinness World Record gave a document to a local church leader to certify that the record for the most contributions to a greeting card had been broken. So President Nelson broke this record at this conference, or did he? Because, and I've talked about this before, but I still think it's so funny, the night of this YSA conference, because, I keep tabs on when things are. If you go to the next slide, I got this urgent email for my stake. It literally says urgent request from the elder area president, elder area president. That's right. I redacted his name, but it said, Happy Sabbath Eve. This is in the spirit of the Olympics and records. And it's an urgent request from elder so-and-so. Again, this is my area, but I found out people all over the country got this letter. Our area president, as you know, there is a YSA conference this weekend. We are trying to break the record for the most signatures on a birthday card and are a bit short. This card is for President Nelson. We're asked that you send this message with the attached QR code immediately to all members in your stake for them to participate in this 2-minute opportunity. All the submissions have to be completed by tonight. So I question again using the word urgent when it comes to your stake, because you think, oh my gosh, something's happening. What is going on? That's why I instantly clicked on it. And then I also question again, is that fair? Is that fair in the Guinness Book of World Records, where the LDS Church is so dialed in that a touch of a button, this email will go to thousands who will send it to thousands. So I don't know. I still question.
Is the card being signed if it's an electronic email? How's that a signature? I don't know.
That's what I don't know. I wish someone would look into this. Like, did they just say, here is the list of the people that signed? Because no, I mean, I signed it. I was not at the conference center, so I didn't sign it. I'm kidding. I had family members that signed it. So anyway, there it was. But he won. He now is the Guinness Book of World Record holder. If he doesn't have enough amazing things under his belt, he now holds that record. So, all right, what else happened after that? Then the day of his birthday, it becomes a state day. You want to tell us what happened there, Landon?
Yeah, Governor Spencer Cox, governor of Utah, declared Russell M. Nelson Day as LDS leader turns 100.
That's right.
So he has become the first prophet president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to reach 100 years old. To mark the faith leader's momentous birthday Monday, Utah Governor Spencer Cox issued a proclamation declaring September 9, 2024, President Russell M. Nelson Day to honor the church, president's dedication to kindness, love, and welcoming spirit.
There it is. He has his own day, a shirt, a card, a world record, a day. It's incredible. All right, then let's go to what happens next. I think then we have a broadcast, right, that everybody can watch on his birthday. And it was taped earlier because you never know the future. And everybody watched that. And it featured a lot of stories of people that had reached out to the one and how successful that had been. and I watched most of it, I think, but he had his 100th birthday broadcast. And part of that, if you go to the next slide, was, all kinds of musical numbers, tributes from his granddaughter and daughter and other people. Balloons were dropped. You can see President Nelson there batting a balloon. And I think there's one more picture where you can just see the whole audience there. It was just a big old day. So, that's kind of what we end on, is just, this massive celebration. And I don't know, is it hero worship? Is it worship? Is it revering? Is it obligatory? Is it something people do because they want to do it? I mean, those are all the bigger questions. And on our final slide, I will tell you what I do. We have one more slide. And on our final slide, if you can get back there, Landon. So as I said, the people that I'm around a lot, they always say, our beloved prophet, the prophet said. They talk about the prophet quite a bit. And I just kind of played a little funny game with myself whenever I would hear them say that, just to help me put it in perspective. And I replace in my mind, whenever they say the prophet, the wizard, and it makes it really funny. So when they say, the prophet has told us that we need to, everybody reach out to the, in my mind, I go, the wizard is telling, I don't know. It just helps me, right? It's a little joke for myself. Do you think that's weird, Coach? I don't know. It's just a way that, since I'm around it all the time, so it doesn't bother me so much, I just say the wizard in my head.
I mean, it sounds cooler, honestly. I'd listen to a wizard over Russell
the wizard
Nelson.
has said there's a conference broadcast coming up. Everybody tune in. So what do you think, Landon? Am I off base? Am I just too weird?
No, I think it's a good way to reality check yourself.
Yes.
If the wizard says to do it and it sounds like something a wizard would say, you might consider that, well, does this guy really have any power that he claims to make this statement?
Yep. No, that's exactly it. It's a way to remind myself that I do not give those words any power, any more than I would a wizard. Right. And yet I know that other people I'm around do give them incredible power, to the point where they might do things that go against things that they wouldn't inherently normally do, like shun a child or somebody in the LGBTQ community, or just, as we talked about, all the things that you can gradually, step by step, be led to do that's against your inner compass, your sense of morality. So anyway, I think we did it. I think, I don't know if we have a definitive answer to the question, do we worship the prophet? But I think we explored a lot of facets to it. So final thoughts, Coach, and then Landon, and then we'll let everybody get on to their conference preparations, because there's a lot of bingo cards to make. There's a lot of snacks to put together. It's coming up. There's maybe a lot of vacations away from TV to plan. Maybe that's more what's realistic in our crowd. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think there's definitely prophet worship in the church, but I don't think it's the same type of worship of God. It's not. Those are distinct, and people that say that put it on par, they're being disingenuous. But they revere him, and if you ask them, they'd say, yes, we love him, we revere him, we listen to him. So the prophet worship is definitely there. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Probably not, but it depends on what they're listening to.
Though necessary to control that many people, and having them give a portion of their income. I think it's necessary to have that dynamic. So otherwise,
I'd agree with that.
It kind of falls apart. So I think they know what they're doing. What do you think, Landon?
Well, when we started out, there were two definitions of worship, and he definitely falls under the second definition, unlike the first definition, which would be what they claim that they worship Jesus in that way. But the second is a real close second. It's almost like he's a demigod, that he's, somehow more than human, but less than God. To me, where I really saw this and where it really bothered me was in the Fairview Town Council meeting, where one man got up there and he said, "You guys, I report to a higher power. You're here on this panel making decisions, and you can feel like you're godlike, and that you have all the power, and that you have more power than you think you have." And these guys are all going, "I'm just deciding whether this meets the zoning code. What are you?"
We're elected officials.
But then member after member got up and said, "Our prophet has told us that this is where it must go. Yes. He speaks with Jesus. He speaks with God." And I'm going, who here really is the one who has a God complex. You're sitting here saying that this man talks to God and talks to Jesus, but nobody else. You're telling these men that they may think they do, but this is the man that really does. And I'm going, do you guys even hear yourself? You're sitting here telling these people that this man speaks and talks with God, and then you're accusing them of doing the same thing.
And the looks on their faces, if you remember that, as far as the town council, they were like, okay, okay, prophet says that, they don't understand.
Yeah, but the people just,
foreign.
there was no discussion because this man, who none of these people even know who he is,
right?
And can we talk to this man? Oh, no, you can't talk to the wizard.
They
He's
ask
behind
over and
the
over,
curtain.
can we talk to Russell Nelson? No. Can we talk to an apostle? No. Can we talk to anyone?
No.
It's a great example, Landon. You're absolutely
and then
right.
again, when I saw people change their belief on a dime, we believe the temple that the spire, church tells you, bam. Church tells you, write 15,000 emails tomorrow. Bam.
Bam.
It is lockstep. It's the same thing you would see in a dictator society where the dictator says, this will happen, and everybody knows they have to jump through and do it, or there's going to be penalties. And it's the same thing in the church. People, when he talks, they change their mind. They don't think for themselves. They do what they're told. That's an indication that they've been completely, trained to immediately react when this person says something without thinking.
Yep. And get on board with it. As we read that quote, like I think about November 5th, 2015, that policy, and how a lot of people had trouble, and they prayed and prayed and prayed, like you, Landon. You were troubled by it and tried to go talk to leaders and things. And they'd get confirmations that, yes, it's the right thing, even if we don't understand. And then flip flop a couple years later. Oh, no,
not a couple years.
Now I have a confirmation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I talked to him on a Sunday about it, and the next Wednesday they changed the policy, and the bishop had to flip just like that.
And he'd spend hours telling you why it was the right thing.
Hearing why it had to be that way. Yes.
And then flip flop. Yep. And that is interesting. Again, we bring up the temple stuff because it is kind of a microcosm of everything that people don't understand, how somebody can just activate like that, turn on with these things that they're defending and things that they're saying, and that's it. When you follow a leader with that much allegiance, you can turn on a dime just like that. And they count on that. So whether that's worship or not, I don't know. In fact, we'd love to hear from all of you in the comments. I hope we've been chatting in the chat. We always have so much fun there. But do we worship the prophet? I mean, I don't know. It depends on your definition of worship, I guess. So we'd love to hear what you think and get your perspective too, because it's kind of a loaded question. But like I said, I found the question on Faithful social media. So I know people are wondering and at least thinking about the optics and if there could be something different, because it might not look great to people that don't, aren't LDS. So anyway, weigh in. Let us know what you think.
When something's bothering you in your gut, when you see it and you're trying to justify it in your head, that's a key point that maybe I don't believe this and I'm just going along with it because I'm told I have to go along with it. But if that feeling is going, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
It probably isn't right.
No, that's exactly that. And the answers reflected that. People were like, well, I know, but they were only a few people said it's absolutely fabulous. It's the best thing. We should worship him more. So I don't even know what that would look like. I can't imagine. And please let us know in the comments if we missed anything. Is there any other aspect of so-called hero worship or something that might be construed as that we missed on our really, really long list? I know it was a long list, so we appreciate y'all hanging in there. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. If you'd like to be made aware of when our new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. You can always help financially support the podcast by making a donation. We have links in the show notes to Donor Box, and we are a 501(c)(3), and we absolutely appreciate every single one of you that does make a donation. It means everything to us. And it allows us to create content like we do, have amazing guests like Kulchan, and continue to bring you all this content. And we just have so much doing it. And we're so happy that all of you are a part of it. We just love it. We also have links in the show notes to our merch store. We have our mugs and hats and fun things like that that say Mormonish on them. And I think we've completed it. Do you think, you guys, that we've done it? I think we've done it.
I think we did.
So everybody have a wonderful conference weekend. No matter what you intend to do. I know a lot of post-Mormon podcasters like watch it. Oh my gosh, RFM Nemo. They usually have their whole conference breakdown. And, I have to say more power to them. A lot of people say, I can't watch conference anymore. It's too triggering. It's too difficult. But I do want to know what my faithful family members are hearing. It's important to me that I know. I feel that way. Like the thing, Celestial Talk, when he said, don't take counsel from people that aren't faithful. And I thought, okay, that impacts me because I have children that have taken it that way, so it's important. So I say more power to RFM, Nemo. Those are the rest of you that do recaps because it's very important and we really appreciate you guys. So practice self-care this weekend, everybody. Everyone has different levels of being able to be involved in conference or even knowing that it's happening. I think probably the best thing I've seen on social media or people say, I don't even remember it was conference, right? They're just living their life and we're not in that boat right now because I'm guessing Culch is going to have some stuff. In fact, really quick before we go, what's coming out with you, Culch? What are you doing recently or have you put out recently that we can look for? If you guys have not discovered Cultural Hall's content and you just want to laugh hysterically for like 24 hours, please go look him up. So tell us what else there might be.
Honestly, I've been in a bit of a lull. We got a new puppy a couple weeks ago, and that has been taking up all of my time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! And I've seen a picture. Is the puppy awake or is he asleep?
He's sleeping right now.
He is so cute. Oh my gosh, he's the most adorable dog. So yeah, everybody knows that about puppy time off. You need almost like maternity leave a little bit when you have a puppy. So we get that. Well, we hope you include the puppy in some of your upcoming videos. So
yeah, well, I did just do a parody song about Joseph Smith called "Story of a Guy." I had done a 1-minute snippet about a year ago. Oh. I did a full version, so that's up. People can watch that, and then I'm gonna have a good amount of Jacob Hansen content coming soon because we have butted heads recently. So
yeah,
look forward to that.
Given. That's right. Yeah. We will put links in the show notes to anything Culch wants to give us so you can find him easily. But he is an awesome content creator and we love it when he's on and we love his perspective. So, all right, everybody, I think we did it. We will say goodbye for now and we'll catch you next time on Mormonish. Bye-bye. Okay, don't turn it off. Don't turn it off because I want to try to work on the sound after Culch goes to bed. So, because I know you have COVID right now. So.
Yeah, COVID shot.
Yeah, no, but you probably have the symptoms of COVID.
Oh, I can stop the recording.
No, go to bed. Thank you so much for helping us pull this off because we did want to put it out Tuesday just because of conference.
That works.
It was awesome. Yep. So, and thanks for all your contributions. You really added a lot to it. It was awesome. So,
thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Landon, so that we can work on this sound. Bye, Culch. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.